right?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna wait for Daniela to give me a heads up of, you can kick off, and then we kick off. Mm. I see that the attendees are still joining. I think that we can kick off because, well, there's still some people joining, but I think that we can kick off, especially because this is supposed to be a 30-minute webinar. So first of all, I would like to say good morning to both of you, and actually to everyone on the chat that is joining us.
Good
Uh,
morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yes, I'm just gonna put here kind of a rule, let's call it like that, or a guideline, which is if you have any question, just go on the chat and write it, and we will answer it. So you can go to the chat and make sure that you are putting it for everyone, so we can see the question. And with that being said, no further ado. I'm very happy to have Francisco and Pedro with me. One is actually a partner, the other a client. So. It's actually very interesting to be here to discuss. This is going to be more like I would say that less an interview or less a webinar, more a little bit of a podcast sharing experiences. And I think that this is relevant because Pedro has been and is going to talk all about Neroes in just a couple of minutes. He has been through the interesting road that it is to have a hardware startup and kicking off with pretty much nothing. So just with a project coming from the university, a spin out. So, with that, I think that I quickly introduce Pedro, and obviously you're going to talk a little bit more about you and your background and what led you to Neros. I'm very happy as well to have here Francisco, who has been a partner for a long time from a previous life and now this evolution life of mine. Who has been helping and supporting several innovation projects because not only startups, you also support corporate on developing hardware, innovative hardware, and bringing those prototypes to an industrialization level. And obviously, you will have the time to talk about your background as well, so on and so forth.
Very
On
happy to
my
be here.
yeah, thank you so much for both accepting to join here today. I think that this could be relevant not only because you might have some interesting piece of advice for potentially some of our participants of the webinar, but at the same time, I also think that there are some key, let's say, conclusions that are awfully misled by the community of the entrepreneurs. And I think that that's also very interesting. So we are going to be talking about the two sides, let's say, of the world of a hardware startup, developing it and getting the money to do it. So I think that with no further ado, I am Sofia. I'm the head of BizDev at Evolution. My background is not tech, but the last 10 years of my life have made me a techie, let's say like that. And here today, I'm very, very happy to be with Francisco and Pedro to talk about this very important topic. No funding, no product, and no development team. So, Pedro, I start with you. How did you kick off and how eventually do you get money without any of those?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to share this place with you. And hello to everyone that is listening to this. So yeah, it's kind of a crazy journey, right?
When did it started? Can you give us a little bit just of a background for
Yes,
everyone?
5 years ago, five more because the research started before. We basically started doing research. So I have an idea. I really wanted to change my brain and to really develop it as fast as I could. Okay, so I took biomedical engineering. I was doing some research with EEGs, things to read the brain, trying to get some insights, etc. And then after having the idea, I was looking for someone to help me. So I found Professor Hugo Ferreira in a university. He is a medical doctor and a professor. And we both together started talking and discussing some ideas, some findings that we have before, and we start doing research together. So after the research, we started having a lot of success. We won the Best Innovative Research Award in the International Scientific Conference, for example, and we started working together, and that was the time. So okay, we already have the proof. We know that we have something kind of special in terms of how to change the brain, the technology that we're developing, but we need a team to put it in practice and move to research from research to really to a
And
startup.
Pedro, by then the hard part was done, right? Because research is the hard part, right? Then, it's easy
Yes,
peasy to
yes,
just go and jump to the
yes.
market, right?
After that, after that, it was just like drink cocktails and be and looking at the sea. So yes, actually, research was the simple part, of course, and then we needed to put it on to make it real. So I didn't have money to do anything. So how do you get people to work? You start pitching, you start researching like interesting profiles that could work with you, and that would turn this into a real technology, like important profiles I was identifying. Basically, I will just talk a little bit about Neroes so you can understand what kind of profiles we were talking about. Basically, we are the first neurotech gym that the corporates can have to really upgrade their brains in terms of mental health and also performance. So we can, for example, reduce 41% of stress and anxiety in just 3 hours of training. And we have a device that reads your electrical brain activity. We identify the patterns, etc., send it to a computer, and in the computer, you need to push things just with your brain, like doing some exercises. And while you're pushing these things, it's like a gym. You are triggering some regions of the brain, developing it really fast, like a gym, pushing, 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 pushing. And by doing that, you are able to increase your focus, decision making, reduce your stress, anxiety, etc. So it's kind of a gym for athletes. It makes no sense an athlete that would not go to a gym, right? So we believe the same thing for the corporate people. It makes no sense. People that work 8 hours per day in an office are not developing their brains to optimize their mental health and their performance and can deliver much more.
Yeah.
So
Pedro,
basically those
you
were
did
kind
a
of
leap
technical.
there that I think
Sorry?
it would be interesting to go a bit deeper. That you told you're a gym for corporates, right? But your vision is to have a gym for everyone. But the
Mm.
leap for a gym for corporates was a strategic move to get early traction, right? And I see a lot of startups that have that down the line. I want to sell B2C and
Mhm.
stick with that, and that can be a problem. So, how did you get to that decision that today I'm going to sell to corporates, and how did it pay off?
It was hard, Francisco. It was hard, but we tried the kind of a lot of things. We wrote those whiteboards, giant whiteboards, like who could be our customer, with a lot of okay, we are doing this. They need that. So how do we validate that? We started by into the health market. But we understood that to enter in the health market, it would take like years because um,
Certifications.
mm, yeah, certifications, a lot of stuff. So we spent a lot of time there. Then we just decided to shift. Okay, let's see who wants performance in the brain. Maybe sports. Sports seems to be a good idea. Okay, and we spent a lot of time also in sports. Actually, we worked with Olympic athletes, for example, and we had great results. We worked with football clubs. we were almost in the two major in Sporting in Benfica, entering with our solution. But things happen, and then we understood that it was because of our technological solution that we need to put the device in a lot of people. It was difficult to do that and have like more than 20 people working at the time, training at the same time. So that was difficult to deal with, and we decided then to, okay, maybe this is not the perfect market fit. We still are finding some problems on that in relationship to the process. So if we go to a corporate, we can have a gym there, and people can go there and train whenever they want. And with the football team, that was not an option. You have like 1 hour to train everyone. So then we moved to the corporate, and we are also we have some contracts with schools that I'll talk later about. So we are kind of in a corporate and education market right
Pedro,
now.
maybe I will just stop here because I think that this is where the journey really crosses with Francisco. So Francisco, just a little bit. So obviously you have been following the path of Neroes since the beginning, and obviously we all remember the first very ugly device he had to put on the head, and it was very difficult to put, and so people, it didn't work with sports or with depression people because it was hard to put it. I think that for people to imagine, if you are going to do like those sleep tests where you have to put EEGs in your body, it's very difficult, it's tough, and that's how it looked like at the beginning. But then, Francisco, you came in, and obviously after Pedro raising his first round, let's say, of private money, and then you came in and you look into it, and let's all be honest here. What did you think, Francisco, and what happened afterwards?
Yeah, so at first, of course, it's part of it, and it's smart, first of all, that he had an off-the-shelf device that he was testing with. A lot of times I see startups that start off by trying to create something completely new, completely novel, that does something very different. And if they can at first use off-the-shelf devices or tweak some of the electronics of something that is already present, they will be much more reliant when they go meet someone like me or a company like FullCycle. Because what Pedro came to us was with an experience, a prior experience of what worked and what didn't work, and proper requirements that, of course, we helped detail and we helped go a bit deeper, but this is fundamental for a good industrialization process. And one other thing that he did very well was, even though he came to us to develop his own product, he already knew one electronics partner that already had the electronics already made. And for that first iteration, he told us, let's use this off-the-shelf electronics. Let's change, as you were saying, Sofia, the UX of the product. So let's make it simpler to use. Let's make it more comfortable to use. Let's make it something that can withstand a test of 2 hours training the brain. And with that, use the electronics already available. What that unlocks. Yeah, Pedro?
Sorry, I think it's relevant for the audience to say that before I was meeting you and doing everything that you're talking about, I was having a lot of problems, like because I was trying to put people training, but they didn't know how to use the device. They spent a lot of time to connect it. There were a lot of difficulties and problems with the device that we were using. So I think I agree with you. I think we should use something that existed, and then but the necessity to go and to talk to you came from there. So that was really important, and then talking with you, like, okay, how can we solve this, spending the least amount of resources, right? And
And
that's
one thing, Pedro, do you have any hardware close to you so you can just show to people? Because in a nutshell, just to give context to everyone, you basically are going to read electricity in your brain, and that will tell a lot about the activation parts that you are doing in your head. And basically, what Neroes makes you do is going into a state that once you reach where you should be, emotional control, focus, so on and so forth, you receive positive feedback on a software. So basically, let's imagine that you are moving a spaceship, like a game, a spaceship, and the spaceship only goes up or escapes, let's say, whatever troubles and wars in the space that they might do. You only can do that when your electrical brain activity is on the stage that Neroes want you to. So you have a positive feedback, right, or negative, right in the moment, so you know exactly if you are doing what you are supposed to in your brain. So it's basically, let's imagine that you start kicking off doing this. I'm just going to explain this so everyone understands, Pedro. So if you start doing these every day for every week for a long time, eventually, let's imagine that you are entering on an audience of 5,000 people and you are absolutely zero nervous because you now can control yourself. Like now you know which region of the brain to activate. And that's what Neuro does. And that's why it's so disruptive. And by the way, I think that it's interesting that you are showing that because this is the new product co-developed with FullCycle. The first one, I was one of the first, let's say, the early users, and it was very difficult to connect. This one is super easy, and I also think that facilitates a lot the process of right now being in corporate, which I also have to say, corporate was a choice just because the barriers of adoption were lower. You know, no one wants to have one more burnout in the company, and that's a huge problem all over the world. So that's the selling pitch.
And certifications again, because if you sell this product, it's very hard because you need to certify the product and expensive and it takes time. But if you sell the service of using the product, that's a huge hack that most startups are not using or not leveraging today. Because Pedro doesn't sell the helmets to the corporates, he sells the gym training. And that means that he's the one there with the product, testing it in their brains, which means two things. He can sell much faster and he has the feedback loop right there. So he's there, or his team is right there, collecting the feedback of what works well and what can be improved. And the iteration cycle is much faster. Now we're preparing a new project now, yes, to optimize the electronics and to optimize everything that was learned from this iteration.
And now I think this is super relevant, and thank you so much for pointing that out. And as probably, I don't know if all of you understood, but actually, Neuro started on the health market with people suffering from depression. But as you know, you need certifications, and everything took way longer. So what I'm going to ask you, Pedro, is like, when did you decided, okay, the route, how am I going to get the money? What would attract money faster? And obviously, I mean, you have been playing very well between private and public money. So can you tell us a little bit about your strategy on that? And I know that Francisco has been following you on that because obviously, in the end, you also need to develop, but it's very costly because in the end of the day, it's still hardware. So how have you managed? How have you been managing these, and what was the strategy? You are muted. You are muted.
Oh, sorry. Basically, in the beginning, so just this is the device. So let me say that that FullCycle did an amazing job because we just wanted kind of an MVP, like to have the first device so we could solve the problems. That's why I was talking to Francisco. Like, I don't want to spend time on hardware. I want to focus on the software. But I need something that works because right now this is not working. Clients are not able to use the device, are not able the previous device that we bought out of the shelf, and we need the solution. So we wrote our requirements and we defined the MVP, and the job was so good, like in the end, that people come to me right now nowadays and say like, this is the most beautiful or usable EEG device that I used in my life. So that was amazing. Like just with the first MVP, just with the first experience, we achieved a really amazing result. So the job was amazing. In terms of the process of having the investment, we started with private investors. We received around 300K, a bit around that, between three different private investors. That money was really important to work on the software, to have also the money to spend it on the hardware, of course. And then we started looking into public funding also. We were doing some public funding in ours, just Neroes, trying to get it, but we find some difficulties because I think we all always missed one thing, and there are startups that are not missing almost in team, in tech, in product market fit, etc. So they had advantage in relationship to us. So our strategy was more looking into, okay, we know that we have something disruptive in terms of technology, etc. So if we partner with other people that have more experience, that have more grounding in the field, that that are robust, really robust, not a startup, maybe we can have more success. And
Yeah. Maybe
actually,
maybe Pedro, just to give some context to people, obviously I think that everyone knows that once you are applying for public funds, you can apply alone for individual grants, or you can apply in a consortium. So what Pedro means right now is applying in a consortium, correct, Pedro? And how did you choose the partners for your consortium?
yes. So basically, we looked into, because there are different consortiums that we have kind of three different uh, financial financial paths that we went. We won basically a Portugal 2030, that is a national program. And for that, we are working with TechFrame, that is a company that develop games. So we kind of see, okay, how our both technologies interact. So we train the brain using also a platform, and they develop games. Okay, maybe we can train the brain and develop a really interesting game, just run by physiological activity, by brain activity, etc., without any device to remote controller. Okay, maybe we can control the game just by thinking, by feeling, etc. So that was the point. Also with the university in Portugal, also working with us. And for that, it was kind of okay. The university can be important because it will have an important scientific role in this consortium. We have TechFrame, that is a company with a lot of expertise, with a lot of relevance, etc. And we are a disruptive startup. So I think all of these different partners make sense in this application and um, give like, I think the evaluators can be more, okay, that seems not so risky application, because we have a bit of everything. So that was our strategy in Neurostars.
And also, in all honesty, for everyone in the room, typically when you go in on consortiums, it's grants that are more likely to give you 100% of co-funding. All right, so they give you, if your project is 4 million, they will give you the 4 million. While when you apply a loan, typically they also require you to have a co-funding. So that's also relevant, right, Pedro? Because then it's not just applying for the grant, it's applying for the grant and finding an investor who would co-finance the full project, right?
Yes, it depends on the funding, but yes. Um, but in relationship to that, like we were approved, for example, in Portugal 2030 for 1 million, but we actually just received 700K. But the rules to get the other 300K were kind of more easy. Like you can show that you have a pathway to get there. in terms of sales, in terms of getting a private investor, etc. So you need to show the strategy. Of course, you like running a company, we need to have that strategy. I think the strategy is the first thing to change, but you but you need to have one. And of course, in these kinds of applications, you need to show that strategy. You need to talk about your plan. You need to show, and you need to reduce the risk. I think everything goes around having value and reducing the risk. That's why I think Neroes was fitted really well in these public investments because we were a risky company, a risky startup, and we reduced that risk with those partners. And also, yes, like maybe it's relevant also, Sofia, to talk about the tender with public schools. Basically, there were.
Which, by the way, I think that it's something that startups never pay attention to, which are the tenders. Tenders, they differentiate from grants because a grant is typically they have a challenge or they have some money available according to some criteria. A tender is something different. So it's a service that the public entity wants, and then whoever can provide that service can apply to the tender, and then you are basically subcontracted to do a project. And this is looks way more like a pilot if you are at the beginning, or it looks much more like a relationship between you and the client. While the grant, no, there's actually like there is probably the goal of you reaching out to clients, but you don't actually need to close a client. So there's a difference. And for track record, for an investor, for instance, investors do like a lot tenders because then it looks like you are starting to have more clients and track record to show use cases, right? So it's relevant as well to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so basically, in this tender, it was created because the government thought that schools in Portugal were starting to be the same. So they were not introducing new technology. They were not were looking into technology to really develop the capability of their students. So they needed a kind of revolution in terms of technology that were used in schools. Um, so they created those tenders to the schools, and the schools were looking for solutions that could really put the school into another level of technology, into efficiency, etc. They looked at Neroes in a way like, okay, Neroes can evaluate and reduce stress and depression or anxiety also in students and upgrade their grades because of that. That is a huge problem. Okay, let's look into this technology and let's go into an application with different solutions, including Neroes, because this is something really interesting
Yeah.
for us
Yeah.
schools. So they applied like different solutions, and in this tender, the school would be approved or not based on the technologies that they decided to apply with. So they won it. The schools won that tender, and then it went to a process of formalizing the solutions, installing everything, the solutions, the hardware, etc. And that
Yeah.
process,
Yeah, in the
unfortunately.
process of starting to execute. We have here a very interesting question, and I really want to tackle these from Tibor. Is this option sell the service works fine in medtech as well? It would be huge, but as I know, if there's no valid CE mark, the product can't be used or just as part of a clinical trial with an ethical committee approval. The point here is not the sale itself, but the approval to use the product. Do I know it wrong? Is there a way to make it happen in medtech as well?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, Francisco, do you want to start? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Francisco.
I can just give a hint because I've done it with dozens, if not hundreds of startups, so it is definitely possible. And besides Neroes, which is an example right here, which is medtech in the sense that the goal is to use this as a way to treat mental disease. And in the road to get there, there are two paths to validate the technology and the business. To validate the technology behind it, you don't need necessarily to go to the original or the later use case. To validate the use case itself, you can actually do interviews and connect to the people or sell just a software around the solution. Another example I can give you in the medtech sector is a smart inhaler. So something that you will use to actually pump medicine into your lungs. And this other startup wanted us to develop this product for them. And the goal there was to take a step in parallel. And basically we created a lung gym, not a brain gym, but in this case, a lung gym. It doesn't need to be gyms all the time, okay? It's just, it
We
happened
are
to be
gym
these two
addicts.
examples. But in that case, basically, swimming athletes need to understand how their lungs evolve during training. And the same technology that allows to evaluate the quantity of medicine that goes into your lungs in a smart inhaler is the same technology that you can use to actually measure your lung. And so instead of having a very small device, super portable, CE marked, that can go into the medical trials, they use like a big box with the technology inside, so much faster, much cheaper to design, to develop, and to test, that went on pools, professional athlete pools, and they could train with that device. And at the same time, they were testing the software app with everything related to the user experience with the actual asthma patients. So it is possible. And again, happy to help out. In the end, you're going to have our contacts.
Yeah.
I've done it so many times. Usually, many times it's very hard for you guys that are so used to seeing your product as is to take that step back and look at at other solutions. And I'm just happy to do it. It's completely free, and you just book a call with me and we talk and we try to
And I
solve
think
it.
that this is something super relevant. Just to add one thing, Neroes never forgot about the project on the medical field, but you are right, Tibor. You need to have CE mark, you need certification to enter on that particular market. So the solution Francisco is giving is a smart one, which is go to a target that is not a medical field target. So you are not going to be seen as a medtech hardware device for treatment, but in the end of the day, you're doing the same purpose. So I think that, for instance, and once you start going into the medical field or something that has a little bit more political agenda, that's when you potentially can look for individual grants. You know, the most famous one, the champion league of the grants for individual startups, EIC Accelerator. For instance, EIC Accelerator would never see with good eyes, you know, a technology as this to be applied for, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo to improve his performance, right? That's where the money might be, okay? Because Cristiano Ronaldo will definitely pay to have these, but it's not where the biggest political agenda is. So when you look into those things, obviously grants can help you a lot with clinical trials when the costs starting like, you know, summing to many millions, and you might have let's call a real impact. So I think that's where we are at, and I think that it would be even interesting, Pedro, if you mention this consortium that you are doing for an EIC Pathfinder. So EIC Pathfinder, it's an earlier stage and consortium driven, 4 million, 100% co-funding. And that application is medical. So we go back, Tibor, to the need, if it is on the medical field, for the clinical trials, for all the testing. So Pedro, could you give us a little bit on your strategy on how are you leveraging on, you know, as Francisco said, you know, let's be smart and put these into markets that we can test ASAP because your client, because your investor wants return. But at the same time, you do not forget that this was a medical device in the first place. So how are you jungling that? And tell us a little bit about your strategy, potentially to go back to the medical field.
Yes, yes. So yes, that's it. Basically, what I want, and I think what the startups want in the beginning is to prove that the solution works. Okay. So for that, you need to, or in my case, what I was looking for was like removing all the obstacles that I have. So how can I remove the majority of the obstacles that I had? And going into the medical field, it was like a lot of obstacles. It was like too difficult, and that was not necessary to prove if the solution worked. If I find another market that is easier to enter, that is easier to to prove the efficiency of the technology. Later, I can go to the medtech while I am developing the solution in this other market, or I find some funding, or I win a grant to enter in the medtech with a lot of money, with investors, etc. But if I have a proof that the solution works, it will be easier to get the money. Okay, so I can kind of remove I remove some of the obstacles, and that's it. So we are still working on like the grant that Sofia was talking about, the Pathfinder. We are looking, for example, to really change dementia and cut the digression of dementia with our technology. With I can go a bit, but talk, it's with the professor of Harvard, etc. And this consortium into the math field, but I'm not putting all my eggs in that basket. Okay, I'm still developing the technology in other sectors while I look into this end goal and while I'm working on the steps that I need to go there, to reach there.
Yeah.
So basically, that's the strategy that we are going into. Like, startups have a lot of obstacles, so how can I reduce the majority of the obstacles so my path can be easier? And
And
that was our strategy.
Yeah.
this is huge for
We are
startups
having
because so many times I hear them in the valley of death, right? It's like I need traction to get funding, but to get traction, I need a product, and to get the product, I need money to pay for the development. But for the money of the development, I need the money from the investors, and they are in that infinite loop. And the
Yeah.
way Nero solved it, which is the way I believe every single one of us should solve it, is you separate your ego, if I may say, from the startup. You know that you want to have that impact down the line, but to have it, there's a road to get it. And it's not a linear road. So you deviate a bit from it to get that traction in a different field that can prove you that there are people able to pay for a solution like yours, even though it's not the same people that you want to solve the problems for down the line, because that traction will then unlock the investment that you need to pour into the development of the math solutions, the biotech solutions, the deep
And in the
tech
end,
solutions.
and in the end of the day, the only reason why Neroes got the tender with the schools, or with why Neroes start working with, major corporate, was because they are selling that they can stop burnouts, right? So in the end of the day, that was not the initial goal, right? So we are talking about potentially, reverting dementia, which would be like life-changing. Nothing from biotech to medtech, nothing has done that ever in the dementia field. But that is, and to answer Tibor, that is the main challenge, right? So the investor does not want to look into something that might be in the market in 15 years from now, so, and with a huge capex, because, clinical trials and all the development. So you have to be smart on the road to start showing some money. Okay, it's not our main target, but corporates will pay for this. Universities will pay for this, and that money will show to my investors that they can keep putting money on me because I execute. The most important thing is, do you execute or not? But one question, just going back, just to follow here, because we have some questions on the chat that I would really like to go through. Within the consortium, Pedro, do you have an IP issue or later revenue share? Or the consortium partners are happy for the income they can earn with the project, meaning the grant itself. So how are you discussing that with the consortium when it comes to, okay, maybe then you can really revert dimension, you'll be like a gazillionaire, and where is my part of the stake? So how do you negotiate this with the partners?
Yes, for that I like the concept of black box. Okay. So basically, you are a consortium. In the end, you want to connect everything and have something amazing and special. Um, that's why you enter a consortium, right? But to to get easy on those IP things, etc. For me, the best option was the concept of black box. So we have Neroes, we have TechFrame, we have EPL, so we have these different entities, for example, and we will develop our solution. Of course, we are always prone to help with the other partners, etc., but we are developing our part of the technology. They are developing theirs. Okay, and in the end we will connect, but those three pieces are separate from each other. Okay, and they don't know, those partners don't know what is happening in here. I don't know what is happening in here nor in here. Okay, so we develop these three different parts and we connect them. By connecting them in the end with those kinds of black boxes, we are it's much more easy for those IP discussions, for who belongs to who, etc. So that's how we are doing. And in relationship to the revenue, it's kind of something that you need to discuss in the beginning with your partners. Understand their interest, understand their what they want. For example, with universities, generally they are more into research, into writing
Publications.
papers, etc. Not so much in having a final product to sell in the market. They're not interested on that. So you need to then to negotiate what will go into papers and what will not go into papers. That's the challenge. But in terms of revenue, that's easier.
But Pedro, in the end, you right now you are publishing a new paper, but you have been publishing a lot. I mean, I think that the way you see it is that if I can publish results and impact, that's something that of the studies, that's something that you do in terms of methodology and actually how your AI and neurofeedback works. That's what you do not publish, correct?
Yes, our strategy was that. So basically, um, trying to go the most of we can, like what we want to publish is the result in the procedure to get the result. But in terms in algorithms and technology, really defending it as I can, and not put, like in the perfect world, it would just be results and procedure and nothing about technology. Of course, sometimes you need to put a little bit of something about technology, etc., to for the
To give
paper,
context.
but
Yeah.
that's the vision. Yes.
Another question that goes a little bit out of this part, so leaving the public funding, going back to the private funding. Pedro, one question. What actually are the requests? So once you start engaging with investors, and you have already mentioned that, what are their requests about the market after, after you pitch? Like what are they looking for in terms of, obtaining the market? So do you talk about the whole potential market, you segmented it, and you focus on the one that is making you money right now or can potentially give you money faster? What was your strategy on your pitch?
Or like really during the pathway of the company, or for pitch for investors?
Pitch for investors.
For
Yeah.
investors. Okay. Um, yeah, because like you need to have a strategy, of course, but you can have several strategies and adapt the strategy based on the investor that you're talking about, you're talking with. But basically, what the investor generally wants to listen is like, what is the segment of the market that you focus on? What is the perfect person to sell? And that's what generally we need to be focused in. The problem is that the truth that you don't know because
So
you
you
need
test, A/B testing.
because you need to test it.
But
And
so you tested it, and your conclusion was, okay, corporate C-level that we want to avoid a burnout, or you want to avoid this person to leave my company. And after a lot of A/B testing, that's what you got. Okay, this is what actually is going to pay me my salary at the end of the month. Was that it?
yes, it was like you don't know, so you need to test. You need to get the resources that you have, and you need to use it to find it. Of course, the information is always like you'll do your best, you'll invest, etc., and you will be like, okay, this seems to be the perfect market for me based on the information that I collected before. So you go and you define it and you go with it. That doesn't mean, no, I think that's a lot of the problem that I had in the journey. Like that doesn't mean that that segment will be the segment in 1 year, in 6 months. Okay, because maybe things are always changing. You are always collecting more information. You are always adapting and adjusting. But talking to investors, for me, it was important to to be confident on the segment that I'm tackling right now. I
Okay.
can choose 10 different segments and I can tell them like, okay, I have these 10 different segments. I think this one is the best because this. I tested this. I got this, and this information. And but I also have these other, I think talking about those other segments are not good because
Oh,
you're just distracting, you're just talking, you're just saying that you don't know,
yeah.
or you don't tested it. So
Okay.
so yes, focus in one segment, I think would be the best option.
We have here someone that is struggling with investors because they're asking for traction. And I mean, this is such a classical question. What was your story your story flow, your pitch to convince investors to put money on the product? Can you summarize in like 3 bullet points?
So the strategy was to go for public investments.
So point number one, public funding, okay?
Because like in the beginning we have investment, but more as a really early stage startup that it was okay not to have so much traction, even if we already had traction in terms of research, a lot of traction in research. Okay, that was important, and traction in terms of people that were using the solution and were liking the solution. But if you have difficulty in traction, I think looking into other companies like I talked before that have traction, that have all of that, and add your differentiation, your specialty into a consortium can help you into having the money that you need. That would be my major advice
So
because
I would say that if we have to summarize in 3 points, Pedro, maybe we could say that first of all, public funding. Second, public funding for consortiums. So look for a consortium that can tackle parts that you probably don't, because if you are still at the early stage, you don't have the team, you don't have the money, you don't have the traction. So you gotta need support on that. And then as a third point, from what you were as well mentioning, a lot of A/B testing, right? Let's see who can use this faster so I can show some traction to then pitch to investors. Would you agree with those 3 points?
yes, like put your resources on having the traction, and if they are asking for sales and money and you don't have money, at least you have questionnaires, at least you have feedback, at least you have a lot of things that eventually will get you to the money. Because I think a lot of times you're focused on, or I was focusing on okay, I need to have to sell, I need to sell, just focusing on the sell and like, oh, I don't have sales, how I will do that, and that will distracting you from the path to get to the sale. So don't focus on the sale if you don't have sale. Focusing on the path to get to the sale. So okay, what is this? I don't have sales, but I have a cell phone, right? I can talk with people. I can tell them why are not you buying the solution. I can do a lot of things, and for me it was more important to focus on the path to get the sale than focusing on the sales because eventually if you are not getting money today, if I was focusing on the path in 3 months, in 6 months, I can have the sales and investors can invest. But yeah, if I am just focusing on the sale, I will never reach it.
Yeah. Now, leaving a little bit of this, I think it is more like a technical question for Neroes. Can this technology be released as a game controller used by millions for recreation with the benefit of improving focus and mental health?
That's one of the objective of one of the consortiums with Tech Frame. So really creating amazing games like that. For example, imagine playing a game where your character is you, really you. Like we are measuring your emotions, for example, and your character can have your emotions, can have your focus. If you're not in a good day today, your character, for example, will not be amazing into firing or doing stuff. You need to practice a bit of focus or something to put your character more in the mood and play better. For example, I think this is a new generation of games that can appear with those kinds of things. So yes, we are always focusing on changing the brain, on developing people. But if we can use recreation uh, for a lot of people that love games, I think both can.
You actually have a project with Neuro Olympics, another grant that you won, correct? Which is a project that is tackling that, right? It's tackling more
Yeah.
the gaming industry.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
With Tech Frame and also the university. So
yeah,
yes, playing amazing games and at the same time developing yourself, like
yeah.
while you are having fun. So
I right now have a question that maybe Francisco can also jump in because I think that you have a lot of experience with these with your clients. So we have Anne saying, I have a problem with dual B2B announcement strategy. First, non-regulated schools, and then highly regulated hospitals in mental health, even to participate to the challenge. For schools, I am not in edtech or health tech. Did you face the challenge of easy first positioning? Okay, so Neroes at the beginning, you were a medtech company. Then you pitch for sports people. Or for instance, Francisco was talking about that thing that probably is for asthma or for, more medical purposes, but then they go for the swimming, champions because it's just easier to test. So how do you position yourself? Because in the end, you don't want to stop being a medtech company, right? Because that's the end goal. So how do you go around with this kind of dual B2B strategy?
If I like your positioning is your main positioning. Like I'm a medtech startup that is trying to solve that problem. The road to get there and the strategy to get there is different. And so you might want to get there and your positioning is still that. But today I'm doing calls to all the schools that can have this problem. And that's something that you don't need to be an expert solely focused on ed tech to be able to sell to a school a project like Neroes has done. You might need to call first a few experts on that or a few people that have already done that so that you can cut some corners, but you can definitely do it. It's just a matter of focus and habits. Like if you make yourselves call each day 20 new contacts of the schools, of the whatever industry that you're trying to get the first traction with, you're going to get it. It's a matter of numbers and effort put into it. But that doesn't mean that you lose the focus in your market. Again, I'm all for doing a parallel development. So in first, you're measuring and optimizing the technology through a different industry, through schools, and getting traction through there. But you're at the same time knowing more of your customers down the line through either other tenders, other grants, or just by yourself doing interviews, going out, launching a platform that is a software that is not medtech but allows you to gather data and needs from your users. And with that, you're always moving towards that goal, but the strategy to get there is step by step, allowing yourself and your investors to have traction and validation as fast as possible. Because if not, you're developing a product from your mind,
Yeah.
from your assumptions, and not actual validation. And to validate technology, you don't need the final user. To validate user experience, that you need the final user. So you can separate both and test them in parallel.
Perfect. I think because of the time constraint and because of the amazing answer from Francisco, Pedro, I will skip your answer on just this one, okay? And now on the other side, we have our amazing Jody Tatiana, who has been our communication and marketing strategist mentor for so many startups. over the years, and she has an interesting question for you, Pedro. And by the way, Jody, thank you for joining. Pedro, many technical founders are exceptional at building products, but have to make a fundamental shift when they begin attracting investors, customers, and partners. As a scientist, yes, because you are a scientist, how did you re-educate yourself to translate complex ideas into stories that people could immediately understand and believe in? Was there a specific moment or mindset that helped you stop speaking from technical expertise and start communicating in a way that invited others into your vision?
Oh my God, that is such a problem. That's such a problem.
Yeah.
It's like your mind wants to grab all the details, all the nitty things, and focus on that, and you have to destroy it day by day until you can think in not a technical way. That is such a problem. But one of the solutions is finding people like Francisco, really, because if you talk with people that can look at what you're doing in another perspective and that has a lot of experience in the market, for example, for defining the requirements for the ad set, what people really wanted and not all the technical things. Francisco helped a lot, for example, with what is really critical here for the user. What are the things that the user wants and not just the nice to have. And it's for a technical person, it's really difficult because you're looking into no, this is crucial, this also is crucial, no, this part is technical relevant because it will connect. So having people and advisors and people that can help you with the technology is really important in the process to really break your mind, to really break the way you're thinking in this technical way. But also it comes with the experience, like talk with investors as much as you can, talk with people as much as you can. At least it was the plan that I did. And I can notice clearly that today, when I'm talking with a technical person, I already understand where he is in, but I am not focused on all of the details, all of those technical issues. I can look into a different perspective and not be so technical, so detailed. And this is a process of, I think, as much as you communicate the idea, people, etc., you'll train, you'll understand. Oh, I was making that mistake. Receive feedback. Okay, why I'm not thinking as a founder? And people will tell you because you are focusing too much on that. This is not important. This is not relevant for the client. And the problem that we have is that we focus too much on technology and not so much on the what in the client. We are just looking into this technology will be amazing and we'll create something amazing with all of these details, and we are not looking into what people want. So in my pet, it was forcing myself, thinking about what people want. What do you want? This? Okay, I'll just develop this. Nothing more. I'll try to distract the idea. The rest of the idea will be distracted. I'll focus on what those peoples are what these people are telling
Yeah.
me. But just to summarize, I think it for a technical person, it is like I am or I was. It is a path, and you need a path that is being developed day by day, month by month, until you destruct all those details that are not necessary in your mind.
Thank you. I'm going to go for the last question, and this one is for Francisco. Anyway, for everyone who wants to then continue the conversation, I just put the email of the three of us in case you are interested. Francisco, this last one is for you. When founders present to you, technology can often be evaluated, but vision and leadership are harder to quantify. Beyond the business model and financial projection, what signals tell you that an entrepreneur has the clarity, communication, style, and long-term vision to build a company worth advancing through your organization?
Well, yeah, that's important. I think that just to be clear, so at FullCycle, we develop hardware We're not necessarily investors, and these usually are more the signals that investors are looking for. But I have launched 4 hardware startups before, and I work with a lot of hardware startups, of course. So I'm qualified, I would say, to answer this. And first of all, it's not one founder; it's a team. And there are different profiles that coming together as co-founders do prove that trust to investors, that one might be a more technical founder that he's all over the tech and can really make of it, and the other might be more of the people person that can go get the contacts and the experience, or has a lot of experience priorly in the market. So understanding how the team revolves around the startup is super important. And then what I like to see is the resourcefulness of the startup. So as Pedro exemplified so perfectly today, like a startup that can move all these pieces of the puzzle, that can, even without funding, just buying an off-the-shelf product and starting to test with different markets which would be the ones that are able to buy them. That resourcefulness will signal investors and partners like FullCycle that startups have what it takes. Because what I know is that you don't know everything, right? That's the only thing that I know. And the startups that fail are the ones that always say they already know everything. They don't need anyone's help. They have everything. The ones that succeed are the ones that surround themselves with partners that have already done it hundreds of times, the thing that they are trying to accomplish. It reminds me of a startup that I was mentoring, and they were aiming to do a public funding, and I asked them which consultancy are you using to write the grant, and they said, no, we're doing it ourselves, and it's okay, but the path there will be a bit slower, and usually surrounding yourself by the perfect team will get you there faster. And then if I would say the last thing is like the values of the founding team, like the core values, like the personal values of humility, of perseverance, etc. That will be the only thing that will be there forever. The business model might change, the communication style, you learn it, the pitch will change a million times. So what stays is the founding team, the way they operate together, the experience that they have, and how they relate to the business itself, how resourceful and how easy to adapt they are.
Wow, amazing, Francisco. Quite the inspirational pitch we needed for the amazing closer of this, let's call it more or less podcast webinar. Indeed, it will be available. Okay, we are going to put it on our YouTube. We are going to send the link for everyone who participated. And we are also going to get some glimpses of the best parts and best conclusions of this webinar. We're also going to be posting it online together with FullCycle and Neroes. So you can also check it on LinkedIn. I have shared the emails of the three of us in case you are interested in funding or in hardware support, or as well, if you want to collaborate, who knows, with Neroes or ask for a little bit more of advice. I would like to thank everyone for spending here the last 1 hour with us. I hope this was, as someone said, quite a realistic discussion. That's what we were aiming for. And I hope that some of these advices can, be of help. And soon enough, Evolution will organize another one. So we will keep you posted. All right. Thank you so much, Francisco and Pedro, for accepting this invitation.
Thank you both. It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. Have a
Thank
great day.
you. Bye bye. Wish you a lovely week. Thanks.
Lovely week.